Welcome everyone to the Fireside Chat on Amplifying Impact. I'm joined here today with renowned journalist and entrepreneur Faye D'Souza. Welcome, Faye.
Thank you, Abhishek. It's a pleasure to be here. I was just reading through and the work that you guys have done, and I think it's amazing. The impact and the sort of the multiple of that impact from simply joining those dots is just amazing. So congratulations on all the work you've done, especially in the last 1 year. And I think that the people who need help have, for whatever reason, needed it more.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much for your kind words, Faye. And, we are delighted to have you today. I'm personally a big fan of your work, and it's great to see, the kind of enthusiasm and inspiration that you have enabled across, especially the youth in India, through various different platforms. And that's been the goal for us at this Karma Summit over the last 2 days, discussing on various topics, right from gender to education to use of technology in this new normal and co-creating a new normal together. And it has been an enriching 2 days, and we are delighted to have you with us in this session. Just wanted to start off our conversation with something that's so close to you is about the role of the media. So in this new world, or in this potentially a post-COVID era where a lot of things are changing, what do you see as the role of the media in enabling doing good to happen and happen at scale?
I'm so happy you asked me this question in this context of doing good work and basically amplifying the good work that's done on CSR. Because normally when people ask me about the role of the media, it's in a completely different context, given what's happening in the world today. So I'm really happy to talk about this because this is something I personally feel very, very strongly about. I believe that journalism needs to be rooted in fundamentally, journalism is rooted in doing good, in making change, in changing people's lives. It's also about cause journalism, which is something I've believed in very strongly, is about finding the real stories on the ground, the real impact, the real people who need the impact on the ground, and joining those dots. Right? So I see the role that journalism can play, and I'm stepping away from the word media, and I'm using journalism here specifically because that's what I know. I see it in two parts. Part one is to find the beneficiary who really needs it. Journalists have this ability, it's the skill, right? To put your nose to the ground and really find those stories, the suffering, and amplify the suffering, thereby bringing it to the attention of people like yourself, people who have access to CSR projects, who can say, hey, you know what? Here is a cause, or here is a group of people, or here is a community that needs our help. So joining of that dots. Also, by definition of it being journalism, it has to, there is a certain level of fact checking that happens, right? There's a kicking in of the tires, making sure that this is truly a cause that's deserving of that primary attention. Then when the actual work does happen, there's room to amplify, because through journalism, you can pick up the impact that happens. This is the change that has taken place, right? And the range of problems, unfortunately, we live in a country where the range of problems actually has room for every brand, every product, every cause, right? And if you would, with your permission, I do want to talk about, one story that I held so close to my heart for 3 years that it almost became personal. So there were, I don't know if you are familiar with the Mahul story, but there were people who had been moved by the government into government housing within 450 meters of refineries and chemical factories, right? And I visited these homes many times. They were living there for a few years. It was an Erin Brockovich story inside those houses. Every home, and these were colis, so these were one-room, settlements. Every home, there was either someone who had already died or someone who was dying in those families. Small children, with massive, who were being born with problems, massive skin issues, women who were losing their ability to have children because of the kind of pollution they were exposed to. So that was my cause, because I felt really strongly for those people, and also because I saw it as a a fairly simple solution for the government to execute, but it did take us 3 or 4 years. But thinking back now, when we talk about how CSR can get involved, we're talking, I mean, while it takes a really long time to move the corridors of power and government to do something permanently about it, putting air purifiers in their homes, water purifiers in their homes, is a good way to make sure that they don't succumb to the pollution they're being exposed to, right? And these are solutions that brands can bring in their capacity, and these are life altering solutions. And actually, journalists will tell you, in whatever field they work, that there is a cause every 500 meters in our country of this kind. I'm currently, I mean, so the broader journalism right now is about how India is beating COVID and whether we're going to go into another lockdown and whether the vaccine is going to come. But the story that I'm currently working on is Dharavi, very close to where I live, where I've spoken to corporation school teachers who tell me that out of 150 students in their 10th standard, 100 students don't have devices. And so they're losing a year. Now, again, at our age, we're like, you know what, it's not a big deal. Nobody asks you your 10th standard. But if you're in Dharavi and you've made it to the 10th standard, it's life and death. And I'm not taking this lightly. I'm not saying this lightly because of the number of suicides we have reported this year among students who don't have access to devices. Again, it's a quick-ish fix, right? Because this is a problem that's extending across the country. It's solutions that CSR could bring in either to a school, to a neighborhood, to a city. You can choose the size of the solution you want to offer. It's just simply about putting the base level device into the hands of a child. This is where I see journalism being able to join those dots, finding the cause, checking it out, physically going there, meeting people, making sure this is a genuine cause, and then joining the dots with brands that actually want to be able to do this. I'm having conversations with people right now who are like, okay, we're going to get a brand of cell phone, because who will just distribute directly to these children. So we just join the dots and put people in touch. We've done this in the past as well when during the initial phases of the lockdown, hospitals like Kama Hospital, KEM Hospital, JJ were running out of PPEs. And I was among the first journalists to go in and meet these doctors. And they said, yes, they gave me a list saying, these are the things that we need. We put them in touch with people who were actually supplying, and we found a way to close that gap. So I see, like I said, I see journalism play two roles. One is in finding the cause. Second is in amplifying the impact. What, for example, NDTV has done very beautifully with the Greenathon year after year after year, which is, I mean, today, if you say Greenathon in India, everybody knows what you're talking about. That's the power of what the media can do when it is, of course, functioning from a pure of heart sort of space.
Got it. No, that's I think something which is when these stories are brought to the mainstream. That's when a lot of people realize the need and the depth of the need, which gets people a trigger to act. So I think that becomes a very important point. And then everyone thinks that they want to do good, but they need these triggers to actually press the button and act. That's important.
Yes.
And once there is some impact, I think sharing these stories of good also inspire a lot of people that maybe I could have been the one doing this, and get them to do more. So I think it's both these aspects, the identification and the amplification, are very, very helpful.
Yeah. So, I want to share this other story with you. There's someone I admire greatly, a Dr. Aparna Hegde, who runs an NGO, and she discovered and she's a qualified gynecologist and a urologist, and she studied in Sion Hospital in Mumbai, and then went on to study in some very fancy hospitals overseas. She came back because she decided that this is going to be her life's work. That women in rural India don't have access to the basic information that we take for granted. That these are the vitamins you have to take. You have to go get a checkup at this point of your pregnancy. That you shouldn't allow your husband to smoke next to you. These things. And because they didn't have access to it, the mortality rates of women dying or babies dying in labor was much higher. She found a way to use technology and to send recorded messages to feature phones, not even smartphones, of these women on a regular basis, telling them, you know what to expect when you're expecting. This is the size of the baby. This is what it can do. This is normal. This is not normal. Go get it checked out. Don't get it checked out. And simply by doing that and partnering with government, she has managed to save lives across the country.
Yeah.
Now, every time I tell this story, and I'm sure you are not surprised because this is what you do year after years in this sort of thing, but every time I tell this story, on my channel, or I introduce her to people, people are like, wow, that's amazing. And I think that, this is the gap that media can or needs to be, we shouldn't be so surprised that there is amazing work happening in our country. And by bridging that gap, we'll be able to connect again to people who want to help Dr. Aparna Hegde save more lives with her NGO. So there I see the role of the media and the amplification that we can actually bring in by telling the positive stories as well.
And just saying, forward that story. So, I'm also an engineer, and when I hear about, this story, it makes me think, we could use technology for, so many different things, and it need not be a, big corporate brand or, millions of dollars of CSR funds. It's just, as an engineer, I have, time at hand, and I can write small code, which can then, create, it can get pizzas and cabs to your home, but it can also help in different meaningful ways. So what do you think is a role of individuals, and how do you think this entire piece around individual social responsibility or volunteering is evolving?
So see, I think that in India, and I believe this very strongly, I believe that as a people, we have this hardwired need to do good. I mean, it's no small clue that you have called your event karma, because it's our hardwiring, right? It's where we come from. I also think that it's a sort of thinly veiled threat to people who don't do good. But I think that when you did talk about code, it's actually a very beautiful thing, because, and I know that you guys have done a lot of this year. Volunteering. There are two hurdles with volunteering. One, people who want to do good don't really know where to go, and they want to associate with good, wholesome, positive work. There is this fear in India of getting caught up with something that's slightly not on the up and up, where the money is not clean, or so. I don't want to get mixed up in anything wrong, right? And I really don't have time from my day job to background check and make sure that. So to be able to access that information is one thing. The other thing, obviously, that again we noticed on the ground when we were covering the lockdown, is that people didn't know which NGO to partner with, and they also was locked in their homes. They didn't know how to help. The only people going out really were journalists and doctors and nurses, and you were literally breaking the law if you stepped out of your house. So what happens then to volunteering? What happens then to the feet on the ground that NGOs were accessing earlier? So the fact that you found a way to make it virtual is amazing. The fact that, we can seed this idea of engineers saying, hey, you can code a little bit if you want to, or you can write a little bit if you want to. You can join there are different ways. You can answer the phones. You can mentor a young person. You can lend your time in some way without actually physically, lending space. So I think that what you're doing is amazing, because, like I said, there's this untapped need for people to do good. I also find it really sharp among our millennials, the ones who are now in their 20s and even younger than that. They feel the need to constantly be part of something better, stronger, more impactful. And there's all of that, there's all of that energy that can be harnessed by what you're doing. But I do want to understand, more than just engineers. I know that you guys have done virtual volunteering. How have you used virtual volunteering? How, especially in a COVID year, what are the various things that virtual volunteering can entail?
Sure. Yeah, in fact, at Godera, we did a lot around the physical volunteering when the world was sometime back, and what we realized in February was that as the crisis hit, people wanted to contribute, but because of variety of reasons, right, from the logistics aspects to regulations and stuff, they can't go out because of the health reasons. So we said, how can we channel this energy of people who wanted to do good, and especially when crisis hits, that's when, the humanity wakes up in humans about, okay, let's do something. And we created, in fact, now the world's largest repository of virtual volunteering opportunities in more than 90 countries, right from, small things like, teaching English or maths to kids whose schools have been disrupted, to helping small businesses, whose financials have been disrupted, or, helping elders get food, or helping, you know,
Yeah.
migrant workers get to new skills, which can be helpful, to helping NGOs whose financials have been disrupted with some pro bono work that helps them reduce costs, to a variety of different things which people can do from their homes. And, especially on the corporate side, there are more than a billion, corporate employees in the world. And all of them are now saving tons of time, which would have gone into travel to their offices. If they can, just take out 1 hour a year to do something meaningful, that's a billion hours of doing good, of people who have, different skill sets. They can teach someone calculus, they can teach someone cooking, they can teach whole bunch of different things if they give out an hour. And the beauty about virtual volunteering is also that it's not hyper local anymore. It's not that, you could help someone only within 5 to 10 kilometers of your radius. Then sitting anywhere in the world, you could help someone anywhere in the world, and that just creates a big, potential to create change at scale. And that is something which we wanted to leverage the energies of people who wanted to do good, especially as crisis hit humanity, and leverage technology to channel this energy in a more effective manner, rather than, just complaining about things on different platforms. You could use and leverage the time that you save on commute, on different things, in a much more meaningful manner.
Have you seen more money flowing into, philanthropy this year? That's the right word for it, whether CSR or otherwise.
I think the entire philanthropy of the CSR space has got significantly, changed this year in terms of distribution of money. So, all the existing programs have been, actually disturbed in a big way because of lack of funding or lack of ability to execute on the ground. It has been disrupted quite a lot. So what we've seen is a lot more money going towards COVID relief across different ways, right? From PPE kits to healthcare workers, to money going to PM Cares Fund, to migrant workers. So a lot of money which was potentially earlier earmarked for, let's say, education, or or arts or sports, has now gone into something, which was probably a much more important need relatively at that point of time, but that has impacted the non-profits tremendously. I think one thing which is interesting that we've seen this year is, though the corporate money has been relatively the same as last year, a lot of individuals have come forth. So a lot more on, individuals, and it's not just the HNIs who have made their money and want to do good. It's the ones who just want to contribute whatever small they can with whatever small they have. So I think that is something that we're seeing, a more democratic, more inclusive, more people's driven philanthropy across the board. So that is something we've seen tremendously happen this year.
What then happens to to the other projects that have received less money, because they would have been on an annual sort of funding cycle, right? Have they suffered? Have they had to find new solutions?
Yeah, for the NGO especially, who were executing projects and had earmarked budgets, which got cut off due to a variety of reasons, it's been a very hard time. So just the cost of doing good has increased because of need for safety, social distancing regulations. The same time, the incoming grants have reduced. So it's been a very tough time for them, and it has disrupted them significantly. And I think for NGOs, the key thing was on innovating in this time of need. So if you are, let's say, working in the space of education, you were working on physical delivery of education. The NGOs which pivoted to a digital delivery of education were the ones who could access a lot more of the capital. So I think the innovation aspect became very critical, and NGOs who innovated fast. It's difficult for NGOs to innovate fast because access to capital, community being not there. So you could pivot to digital education, but if the kids don't have access to digital
Yeah.
infrastructure, it doesn't work. So I think the first thing was innovation. Second was just being very honest and transparent about what you can and can't do. So a lot of the NGO community want to help the most when there is a big crisis. It's just natural for them. But they need to also recognize the amount and access to resources and capital that they have, and just being honest about what they can do and they can't do. And the third thing for them was also you know trying to get to a lot of the individuals that I was mentioning who have been now become new donors or new volunteers, and getting access to them and working with them was also something which a lot of the NGOs did. So these are some of the things that we've seen in the NGO world which got disrupted significantly, at least in the short term, but we will definitely see even longer term effects of this.
And I do know that you focused the summit on gender, technology for good, and healthcare. But do you believe that in the environment or the entire sort of landscape that you're looking at, these are the priorities right now, this year, across the board?
So consistently, education and healthcare were the two areas which got more than 50% of the CSR funds every year. I think what has changed is just the delivery of these focus areas. So education is a problem, healthcare is a problem that we need to solve. I think what has changed this year is just the way of delivery to solving these problems. So the goal was to get to most of the most critical problems and understand what has changed in terms of delivery, and see if there are any successes or learnings from failures, and share it with the broader audience so that people don't have to reinvent the wheel. Anything that works, scale it. Anything that doesn't, learn from it, and helping the community, in fact, design the right projects in this new normal because of the multiple changes, and sharing the learnings has been the goal for us.
Have you seen social media play a larger role? Because for almost everybody else, social media stepped in and sort of bridged some communication gaps. Is that happening also in the philanthropy space?
Yeah, I think the social media played a huge role in getting more people, activated to do something around it in different ways, right? From, as you mentioned, wherever on social media people saw, misery or suffering, they went ahead and did something. And wherever there were small heroes who did something, they went ahead and, celebrated and recognized them. So social media is definitely playing a key influencing role. I think, as with any technology, it's about how best do we leverage it to channel the energies in the right way is something which becomes very critical. And I know you have done that, really, really well, leveraging social media for positive change. And what would be learnings from your side, let's say to an NGO who wants, to now say, use social media because they can't, do the conventional fundraising events or dinners or reach out to the community.
Yeah.
How does an NGO use social media, and also the role of influencers like yourself on creating positive change?
So a couple of things I've learned, and honestly, I've actually become really active on social media after I exited television last year. And started using social media because after a point there's only so long you can sit at home and not do anything. So it's like, okay, let's start using social media. In that, there's a window called the gardening leave window where you can't work anywhere else, and that's how I arrived at the point of, what, I'm not going to join anywhere else. I discovered that people on social media have a far more personal relationship with what they read than any other form of media. The relationship is towards an individual more than a brand or an entity of some sort. And every individual, if you see, all influencers tend to stand for something. Somebody is a gamer, and so XYZ, that's why people will follow that person. Somebody else is into cooking, someone's into fitness. So these broader categories of what people fall into and why someone follows them. And so the audience tends to be fairly defined that way. I think the most important thing, and the word for me has been authenticity. People just like to feel that you're being real. and you're being honest to a point of also, what's and all, and not covering up anything and just being completely honest about who you are. If I were an NGO or if I were advising an NGO right now, I would ask them to partner with an influencer. And this is where I see that there is a difference right now with the way media was being used up till now, and the way I believe, to answer your earlier question of how this will change in the future. So I don't believe that placing ads is going to make any impact anyway. Most people are migrating away from media that has ads at all. I mean, young people don't pick up a newspaper, and so a lot of times they don't know what's on that, that really expensive front page ad they just haven't seen. And they're not watching television. So now you're going into a phase where people are paying for content. And when they pay for content, they don't want to see ads. So then how do you reach these people? You reach them by partnering, not by slotting ads, which is a very different thing. You partner with someone who believes what you believe. You partner with someone who also wants to see the same end result, who is also invested in the final goal, in seeing that impact. And so I believe partnerships will work more going forward, because you'll find either individuals or journalists or organizations who believe in larger cases like water, like forestation, like sanitization. Those are the bigger, of course, pre-COVID sanitization, and this thing meant building toilets. Now it means just washing our hands. But all of these things are larger causes. But even the smaller causes of women's safety, going in and out of work, equal pay, LGBTQI rights, rights across, all castes, all of these things as well. All these causes, you will find organizations who have this, who are invested in these same things as you are, or individuals or influencers. And when you partner, the amplification and the honesty of it is just far stronger than anything you can achieve by placing an ad or by placing this thing in a newspaper, because you have someone, you actually have a partner who's bringing in the amplification and the following. And when that person is doing it honestly, it really hits the mark. Much stronger than what would happen otherwise by spending crores of rupees and placing an ad in a newspaper, especially for brands that are doing CSR. I find this a far stronger way to go, than anything else. That's the change, the turn I'm going to predict for the next 1 year.
No, absolutely. I think especially in the doing good space, and anyone selling there, you actually have a lot of skepticism around it. And the more you partner with influencers who are authentic to their followers and to the cause, and to you, I think that creates a trust and transparency, which is so critical, and probably a little bit missing in the doing good space, which can be improved on.
Yeah, because you can't, you won't have someone who spent the last 1 year unboxing, using a lot of plastic, who suddenly then tweets saying, "Oh, I feel very strongly about plastic." Their audience will rip them apart. So there's a certain level of authenticity that is demanded, from influencers and from social media, and it's very easy for brands to then make those calls as well, because it's obvious, it's out there. You know what these people stand for. You can. From my switch from television to the internet has taught me that the transparency is a double-edged sword. So brands can tell what the size of your following is, what the age group is, what these people, like. And so there's a far greater transparency in who you're reaching, and what impact you're creating, and how much time they're spending on this particular piece, or this particular message, as opposed to traditional media that doesn't have those, doesn't have that transparency.
Correct. Yeah. And just to take you from that, as in from a, let's say, a CSR head perspective or a CEO perspective, of a company who wants to, one is do good and also demonstrate that they want to be good citizens. What would be your advice to them as to how should they think about on partnering with influencers, or thinking about post-COVID way to amplify their impact?
So, like I said, one of the best ways to do it is to partner on content and not just, look for. Invariably, there is a broken relationship between PR and journalists, right? So you'll have someone make a phone call saying, "Oh, I have a client who's done this, like, great work. Will you write a story?" That person saying, "I don't know." instead, if there are partnerships from the very beginning, saying, you know what, this is the problem we have seen, this is the solution we're planning on delivering, these are the partners involved, this is our final impact. Come on board as our media partner, influencer partner, whatever you want to call it, however you want to structure it. And it's and you basically partner from end to end. So it's a project you do together. You take combined pride in the result. And then you're not making that call saying, hey, dude, can you please, carry this? Because it's also my work. It's also my impact. It's also my pride. And it automatically gets, amplified. And also you will have, you take your audience or your market through the journey with you. Saying, okay, this is point A, the problem. Point B, C, boom, this is the impact. And people travel with you in that journey. And I think that messaging becomes much stronger. And they feel a lot more positive about being part of the whole story. Sort of reality TV, but with a heart.
No, absolutely. I think, if there is a movie only with the climax and nothing as a prelude, it becomes very difficult to appreciate the climax as well. So,
you have to appreciate the journey and, root for someone. I think that's really important. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think that's something which we have seen across companies also, the shift of, CSR being a, corporate communications function to becoming more mainstream. It's just not it has to be HR and get your employees involved. It has to be your operations and ensure your supply chain is involved. It has to be your finances and ensuring you do or invest in the right kind of companies to, across the board, it is becoming more mainstream and, to your point, more authentic and inclusive. I think those are the two things that we are also seeing across the CSR piece, which is just not about, creating a news story or a, beautiful looking video in the end, but actually meaningful impact out and more inclusive, authentic one.
Which I think that you know this better than me, because I remember reading a study somewhere, now this is off the top of my head, that basically it has been proven that if you get your employees involved in your do-gooding, then it improves their mood, that it improves their morale, that it improves team building. So instead of taking them for an offsite to a place where everybody's going to jump into the pool and anyway, this is a great way to spend a weekend. It builds an appreciation for your personal quality of life. It builds an appreciation for the company and the work the company is doing and the impact it's making. Plus, apparently, it aids mental health, from what I understand. Do you have like a clearer understanding of this? I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when employees are doing good, I think it helps the community, but it also helps the employees and the company, significantly. So across the board, we have seen across customers where, they have seen reduction in attrition rates, better employee happiness and morale, better team bonding, and especially, in this remote work, remote environment, when teams come together to do good, as in that's when they connect with their colleagues, they connect with each other, they feel they're part of a mission or something with purpose, which especially the millennials want it a lot more. There needs to be some purpose and meaning there, and I think this brings in that purpose. And instead of a really random employee engagement activity which is just done for the sake of it for everyone, this is probably the most meaningful way in which you could engage employees while also doing good in some small meaningful way.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. What's your, out of curiosity, what's your prediction for the next year? Do you expect, or how long do you think it will be before we go back to the way things were in terms of what our needs are as society, what our priorities are in terms of CSR and philanthropy? Or do you think that the environment has permanently changed and we're probably never going to go back?
Yeah, I think, basis what we are seeing with our customers, NGO partners, and employee volunteers, I think there is a new normal, definitely. So the change which would have taken decades has been accelerated to a couple of months. I don't think the status quo would remain either of today or of a year back. It would be something of a mixed, a semi-remote office is what they would call it. But, somewhere in between where, let's say, from an India perspective, instead of probably building a lot more schools or hospitals, we would do more digital education and, digital healthcare. So I think the outcome of education and healthcare remains the same. The method of delivery will evolve significantly because of the COVID thing, and similarly, across the board, where we feel there is a new normal which is getting created in terms of how people work, how people get access to the basic necessities, how people communicate with each other. As in, all of this has evolved or will evolve to a new normal somewhere in between the pre-COVID and during COVID times. And I think the goal for every one of us is to try and predict that to an extent, and that's what we're trying to do at the summit, is understanding what potentially is the new normal, and what are the right interventions to be done to ensure that in this new normal we have most effective way of doing good.
Like I keep saying, I think that the work that you guys are doing is outstanding. I think it's really special, and especially with this, like I said, very interestingly named summit and awards. I think the messaging is really strong. So, congratulations and good luck.
Great. Thank you so much, Faye, for your time, and it was great interacting with you. We'd love to stay connected and work on potentially different things. I think our missions are aligned, and especially as you launch Beetroot, and then we would want to see how to potentially work together on some aspects.
I'd love to do that. I'd love to do that. And I think that I've always believed, I've been raised to believe that if your heart is in the right place, if your final aim is ambition is to do good, that there's always success, however long that takes. So good luck to both of us then.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Abhishek.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much.